GlobalData has revised its 2022 growth forecast for Africa to 3.5% from its earlier projection of 3.7%. It was just last year that African nations recovered from their worst recession in 50 years. And we're joined by analyst at GlobalData, Animesh Parikh. Thanks so much for being with us today. Now, why has GlobalData cut Africa's economic growth forecast to 3.5% from 3.7%?
Actually, we know that African nations are facing uncertainty. So mainly like conflict and weather extremes and economic shocks. Plus, these are being contributed by the COVID-19 and now the Ukraine war. So these shocks, in the region, they are affecting the major nations like Nigeria, for which we have projected the growth of 2.6 earlier, but now it has come down to 2.4. And the South Africa, it has also reduced. Same goes for Morocco, Ethiopia, and Ghana. They are growing, but the situation is leading to stagflation maybe.
So you shared the projections for the growth rate of Africa's two biggest economies, Nigeria and South Africa, but which are the slowest growing countries in Africa this year?
So the slowest growing nations include Equatorial Guinea, although it is a small nation, but its growth projection that we are hypothesizing is around minus 3.9%. And another is Sao Tome and Principe, which we are expecting to grow around 1.67%. Another is South Africa, which is one of the largest nations, and it is growing at 1.81%, which is very low, which is below 2%. Sudan is the one, which is 0.2. Another is Swaziland and the Republic of Congo. So these will be growing around 1.9 and 2.1% respectively.
And these poorer populations, how vulnerable are they to rising food prices? I mean, groceries account for around 40% of consumer spending in Africa.
Yeah, right. Actually, the thing is, like if we see the scenario at Morocco, that nation particularly is having a drought right now. Plus, most of the nations in Africa are importing from these conflict affected areas of Russia and Ukraine. These nations are not having enough to produce themselves, plus the imports which are coming from outside, from the external factors, these are also being hampered. So it's a two-way blockage. Now this two-way blockage cannot be good for the vulnerable section of the society of Africa. So this is creating a food insecurity issue, as it is quoted by World Food Program also in a report recently released, and plus FAO is also concerned about this thing.
So how can countries really insulate themselves from the direct and the indirect impacts of the Ukraine war?
They need to be very much creative about this approach. First of all, they need to balance between the curbing of inflation and supporting the growth, as this might lead to a situation of stagflation. Another thing which policymakers can do is they can reduce or waive off their import duties, and the food supplies can be temporarily be switched off from this thing. And at the same time, the commodity importing countries, like they are facing tighter fiscal constraints, and they are finding resources to be very much not available to them. So they can reprioritize the spending by eliminating their wasteful subsidies to state-owned enterprises. Like Egypt is the one country which is privatizing its around 10 odd state-owned enterprises to curb inflation and directing those resources to the import duties, and so that they can be sustainable in this food security part. Fourthly, I would like to add on is that they can improve upon the digital and economic transformation. This can be supported by concessional financing done by development banks or international organizations. Lastly, we have Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement, which can also help in reinforcing this regional integration and reducing global disruption in any future way.
Thanks, Animesh, for your insights today. Thank you.
Thank you, Ramya.